About a month after it was released, my wife and I finally had a chance to go and see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and boy was it just as good as everyone had been saying. The visuals, voice acting, story beats, and of course the music were all phenomenal. And when I left the theater, I was ready to shell out another $15 to see it again right then and there. After I got home that night, like any self-respecting gamer would, I immediately installed Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I happened to pick up just a couple weeks earlier during the Steam summer sale. As it downloaded, I did some quick research on how long it would take to complete, checked out some reviews, and scrolled through some posts about it on Reddit. While its launch reviews were largely glowing, I noticed that some folks had complaints about the game's length compared to the original, clocking in between 12 to 15 hours for most. As I sat and waited for the game to finish installing, some questions rolled around in my brain. When is a game too short? When is a game too long? Have we as gamers been conditioned to believe that any open-world experience that doesn't last for 50 plus hours is an abject failure? Before I could continue this internal philosophical debate, the game was ready to go, so I jumped right in and it had me hooked from the very start. As I played, those questions from earlier refused to go away, but by the end of my time with Miles in New York City, I had my final, concrete answer. Less really can be more, if done right. Miles Morales released to a divided reception back in November 2020. As part of the PlayStation 5's launch lineup, it was slotted into a catalog featuring several impressive titles: the Demon's Souls remake, Spider-Man Remastered, and Astro's Playroom. You might think I'm joking with that last one, but it's actually a low-key banger. Both critics and fans alike had some issues with the game, although review scores landed largely in the 7 to 10 range, which I generally agree with. Some players, however, had a more lukewarm take, with many calling out its condensed length and scope when compared to the original. As someone who hasn't played the original Spider-Man or its remastered version yet, and yes, feel free to roast me for that in the comments, I can't make the same comparison, but I can understand where these fans were coming from, to a degree. 2020 saw the release of some truly massive titles, like Pillars of Eternity 2, Death Stranding, and Horizon Zero Dawn. And many gamers, including myself to be honest, have been almost conditioned to expect open world and open world adjacent titles to provide 30, 40, 50 or more hours of game time, simply due to their core design. With that context in mind, and with Miles Morales being released alongside Spider-Man Remastered, it's easy to see why fans took issue with the game's size. But nearly 3 years on from release, it shines in a different light, one that we desperately need in an age of gaming that continues to be dominated by massive open-world experiences. I, like many of you, didn't get my hands on a PS5 until well after the console's original release window, back in the winter of 2020. After finally landing one, I've enjoyed some excellent titles on the machine. Returnal, for instance, is one of my favorite games from the last few years. But I grabbed Spider-Man Miles Morales during the 2023 Steam Summer Sale, while it was on a steep discount. And while it does offer a better experience than many PC ports out there, looking at you, Jedi Survivor, it wasn't without its faults, of which there were a few, some quite noticeable. I experienced 2 hard crashes during my playthrough, one while swinging through the city, and one during a minor combat encounter. Fortunately, neither occurred during any major gameplay sequences or important plot points, but hard crashes are never fun and should always be called out. Beyond that, there were a few visual, audio, and gameplay issues I also experienced. Most gameplay-related bugs were thankfully minor, like enemies getting stuck on objects and bad NPC pathing. However, there was one particularly hilarious interaction where after saving a truck driver, he proceeded to whip out into the street, then onto the sidewalk, barreling over several pedestrians before blazing off into the sunset. While the onlookers were able to get up and walk it off, it was quite funny to watch. But then again, maybe this was just Insomniac giving us an accurate depiction of your average New York City driver. One audio bug stuck out in particular, which occurred after using Miles' Venom Punch to power up a generator. More on that later. Afterwards, the sound of his powers crackling wouldn't go away. Like ever. Unfortunately, this happened to pop up during the game's introduction of the Prowler, which totally ruined that conversation for me. I was able to finally fix it by quitting to the main menu and reloading, but having such an important moment ruined by bad audio didn't feel great. Thankfully, I only ran into a single quest-related problem during one of the game's side missions. Miles is asked to help a construction worker get his crane up and running after being covered by icicles. No biggie, right? After arriving on scene, the worker asks you to shoot off the ice with your webs, which should be easy peasy. Unfortunately, after knocking off every bit of ice I could find, the quest wouldn't progress. I spent the next 5 minutes swinging around like a madman, searching for a hidden icicle I had somehow missed, but after combing over every square inch of the crane with no success, I fully believed the quest was bugged and I'd have to start over. Out of frustration and desperation, I started shooting webs all over the crane, and lo and behold, one of them struck invisible gold. Or ice, I should say. A few more webs later, the invisible ice was no more, and the quest moved forward. All's well that ends well, but in the moment, it was certainly annoying. In terms of PC performance and graphics, the game ran flawlessly, bugs aside, on my i9-10900 and NVIDIA 3080, and still looks pretty good for being almost 3 years old, with a few minor exceptions. I did notice some NPCs looked a little bug-eyed at times, and some textures like skin could look a little waxy and dated on certain NPCs. On the flip side, most main character models held up perfectly well, with Miles and Finn in particular looking quite nice. Generic visuals are also decent, but what really blew me away was the excellent rendition of New York City. The lighting, textures, and visuals all look incredible. And while its age does show a bit at times, such as looking out over a large area from far, far away, the environment holds up extremely well and provides plenty of breathtaking vistas to enjoy while swinging through the skyscrapers or kicking back on top of a building. In addition, the settings menus, yes, there are two, offer a good range of values to play around with, especially for a PC port. You can tinker with some graphics options in the game's launcher menu, which can be disabled if you so desire, and can also perform a second round of tuning in-game as well. Impressively, I didn't notice a single frame drop or dip in performance during my playthrough. You might be thinking, well, the game is nearly 3 years old. I'd hope it would run well on a 3080. But the fact that it was able to maintain a rock-solid frame rate during both combat and traversal sequences should be applauded, especially in light of the motion that occurs on screen while flying through the air at breakneck speed. Now that bugs and performance are out of the way, let's dive into the game's story. There will be some spoilers in my breakdown, so if you don't want anything ruined for you, skip ahead to the next section. Okay, final warning. Here we go. The plot of Miles Morales follows, yep, you guessed it, Miles Morales. Thanks to a nice little recap at the start, a feature I greatly appreciated as someone who hasn't played through the events of the first game, you get a nice little refresher or primer, depending on your past experience with the series, before diving into the action. As far as superhero storylines go, this one is fairly bog standard, but I don't count that as a knock against the title, and we'll circle back to that point later on. Miles is still learning to balance the responsibility of his powers with his personal life, while defending his family and friends from unexpected dangers, all while battling against inner doubts about his worthiness to carry the Spider-Man name forward alongside Peter Parker. With Pete and MJ taking a well-deserved vacation to Symkaria, Miles is left alone as New York City's sole Spider-Man until they return, setting the stage for the game's events to unfold, and it doesn't take long for evil to rear its head after Pete leaves town. Over the next few weeks, Miles goes toe-to-toe with two distinct villains and their corresponding groups of cronies. The first is Simon Krieger, your average money-hungry, corner-cutting, corporate asshole whose company Roxxon is looking to roll out their miracle energy source, New Form, to all of Manhattan. Krieger is locked in a power struggle with the second antagonist, the Tinkerer. This mysterious masked figure is the leader of the Underground, a gang of high-tech anarchists with a shady agenda. And about halfway through the story, they're revealed to be none other than Finn Mason, Miles' childhood best friend, upping the stakes of their conflict even further. This three-way confrontation comes to a head as Finn seeks to detonate a New Form reactor in the center of Harlem, threatening to destroy Miles' home and kill off his family and friends, thanks to Krieger's corporate shortcuts that made the reactor unstable. Spider-Man and the Tinkerer clash amongst the crumbling Roxxon Plaza, with Miles desperately trying to stop his former best friend. Thanks to his previous deceptions, Finn is unwilling to believe his pleas about the reactor until it's too late, at which point the new Spider-Man must use his Venom powers to absorb massive amounts of energy generated by the meltdown, only to realize that his release of the energy will still flatten all of Harlem. Recognizing what she has done, Finn uses her Tinkerer tech to spirit Miles up into the sky above New York, sacrificing herself in a final act of redemption to protect the innocent people below. In the aftermath, Miles has earned the respect of Harlem and New York, finally feeling at home in his role as the second Spider-Man and teaming up with Pete upon his return to the States. I previously referred to the game's story as bog standard, a typical superhero romp by most accounts. However, experiencing these events through Miles' perspective, impactful performances put on by the other characters, and a resolution that sets the stage for Spider-Man 2 all come together perfectly to create a package that punches well above its seemingly generic weight. Voice acting performances are excellent across the board. Miles is extremely well acted by Najee Jeter, and Yuri Lowenthal serves as the tried-and-true staple in his return as Peter Parker. The supporting cast also nails their roles, for the most part. Rio Morales, the Prowler, and Finn all put on great performances, with others like Krieger and the Rhino doing the best they can with their limited screen time. The portrayal of Miles as a growing teen, learning the superhero ropes and coming into his own, is heartwarming. And, while physically absent, Peter still manages to lift Miles up and help him navigate those pesky growing pains through phone calls, virtual training regimens, and other support. Watching the camaraderie between the two Spider-Men grow as the game progresses is really cool to see. There are some references that will go over your head if you haven't played the first game, albeit nothing that will take away from your enjoyment. Completing the OG Spider-Man isn't a prerequisite to enjoying Miles' story, and there are some flashbacks and callbacks that I thought were quite nice, even as someone who went in totally blind to the franchise. One final bit of props I want to give Insomniac is for their inclusion of Haley, an acquaintance of Miles who plays a role in some side content, and who also happens to be deaf. As someone who grew up with exposure to the deaf community, having a deaf character featured so prominently was quite touching. She certainly doesn't overstay her welcome, but puts on a great performance while growing closer to Miles throughout the events of the story, and her inclusion was an excellent touch. The game's conclusion offers a satisfying ending to Miles' solo adventure, as the burgeoning superhero truly comes into his own as Spider-Man, ready to face whatever dangers might visit the city alongside his pal Peter. And a nice mid-credits teaser for Spider-Man 2 gets you hooked on what's to come. Besides, New York during Christmas is never a bad setting for any story. Speaking of NYC, you'll be doing plenty of quests, side missions, minor activities, and general exploration throughout the urban metropolis as Miles' story unfolds. And I have to say, simply making my way back and forth across the city as Spider-Man was enough to justify my time with the game. Something that immediately struck me after venturing out for the first time was just how good web swinging felt. Flinging yourself through the air, diving down between skyscrapers, and vaulting across rooftops felt just as good as everyone always said it did. I'd often find myself taking the scenic route on my way to an objective, just to spend a little more time soaring through the air and enjoying the rush of traversal. I only fast traveled a handful of times during my entire playthrough. I mean, why on earth would I sit through a loading screen when I can experience the euphoria of web swinging my way there instead? Traversing the open world never felt like a chore, not even once, which is a true accomplishment when compared to the likes of your average experience in the genre. Not to mention more subpar offerings like Diablo 4's horseback riding. Sorry, Blizzard. When you do encounter a loading screen, it moves along quite quickly, but the background imagery is enjoyable, and Miles' suit will update to match whichever variant you have equipped at the time. A nice little touch to keep you immersed. Adding to that immersion are the various social media posts, radio blurbs, and podcast chatter that complement your accolades. As you progress the story, the world around you recognizes those accomplishments, with Danica Hart and Jonah J. Jameson giving their own, polar opposite opinions on your recent escapades. These small additions to the open world help it come alive, and make it feel like your actions really are being seen and felt by the people of New York. Insomniac has also done a fairly good job of making the city feel alive. And while crowd density and other open world hallmarks have been markedly improved for Spider-Man 2, the experience here never felt like a letdown or eyesore, even if it's a bit dated 3 years later. Paired with this open world and its exquisite traversal are a number of secondary activities outside of the main story to occupy your time, providing more world building and side character development, while allowing you to test your mettle against various enemies and hone your Spidey skills even further. Some are available right from the start, while others only unlock after progressing through certain points in Miles' adventure, ensuring you always have a smattering of side content to engage with. Side quests are a nice combination of lengthy and impactful missions with lasting ramifications for characters in the world, paired with others that provide fun little distractions when you want to break away from more serious matters for a little while. Whether helping to repair a community center or defending a possible romantic interest from the henchmen of a returning villain, these smaller bits of action were all enjoyable, and some stuck with me for quite a while after wrapping them up. You'll also encounter plenty of random events as you make your way from place to place. These repeatable activities primarily include breaking up your run-of-the-mill crimes by taking out goons attempting to commit robberies, assisting the crews of malfunctioning helicopters, and disrupting back alley weapons deals. Your typical day-to-day superhero stuff. They also feature small tasks handed out by the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man app, a handy little system created by your partner in crime Genki that lets the citizens of NYC send out requests for assistance. Some people need you to rescue their cat, others might be desperate to snap a selfie with the new Spider-Man, but whatever the problem, Miles is more than happy to help out. While not groundbreaking, these activities are standard fare for any open world game, and provide a nice way to practice your combat repertoire while also farming a little more XP. Although I will say, the number of criminals conducting midday meetings on top of skyscrapers was a bit hysterical. In addition to these missions and activities, you'll also be able to clear out some of Roxxon's labs and underground hideouts, uncover hidden tech caches, and collect a variety of different collectibles scattered throughout the city. The labs and hideouts offer more difficult combat arenas to tackle, featuring a higher density of enemies, including more challenging foes from each faction, that can be tackled with either a stealth approach or an all-out frontal assault, depending on your patience level and preference on playstyle. These locations provide a fun variety of challenges, and I often found myself overwhelmed by a flood of baddies if I didn't use stealth to get me at least partway through, or use my combat arsenal adequately to handle the onslaught. Some of these strongholds were also home to underground caches, hidden chests that when located provide a smattering of tech tokens to use on unlocking new upgrades and gear. Sprinkled about the city, both inside strongholds and outside of them, these were fun little locations to track down that made it worth your while by helping you rack up more tokens for unlocks. There are also plenty of unique and varied collectibles for you to chase, and these aren't your typical pick up 10 MacGuffins checklists either. The items you'll be tracking down might seem mundane, time capsules, sound samples, and postcards, but each set has unique dialogue from Miles or another character to accompany them, which provide more backstory on the supporting cast and require various methods to locate and obtain. Each of the 3 varieties are both meaningful and enjoyable to track down, and by accumulating all of them, you'll unlock deeper glimpses into Miles' father, the Prowler, Finn, and even Miles himself, which help make the game's characters feel more relatable and real. I also loved how different categories of collectibles were unlocked at different points in the story, including the final set that isn't available until after completing the main quest. This was a great way to extend the adventure, and not by artificially bloating it either, while also making its ending even more poignant. Another highlight amongst these activities are the various combat, traversal, and stealth challenges you'll encounter, conducted virtually by Miles' esteemed mentor, Pete. Each proficiency has 3 distinct challenges of scaling difficulty, that once completed, unlock tokens and new abilities for Miles to toss in his tool bucket. Peter's tasks for his protege are unique and entertaining, for the most part, with the combination of themed objectives and Spidey's dialogue in the background making them all worth at least one completion. Don't worry though. If you aren't able to achieve a gold rating your first few times around, you can always revisit them again down the line to put a bow on any incomplete attempts. Unlocking new abilities through these challenges is awesome, and the sense of progression enhances Miles' growth as a superhero even further. These sessions culminate in a showdown with the returning villain from the first Spider-Man game, or a virtual recreation of him, at least. This boss battle was a bit easier than I had expected, but the visual spectacle alone made up for any shortcomings in its difficulty, and was the perfect way to wrap up Pete's long-distance mentorship. In addition to all those other activities and collectibles I mentioned, there is a dazzling selection of supersuits to unlock. Acquired through various means, completing certain missions or challenges for example, they not only allow Miles to rock some truly awesome styles, but unlock new modifications to experiment with as well. Insomniac came with the heat on these, creating some absolutely beautiful designs. My personal favorites were the Programmable Matter and Bodega Cat suits. I mean, let's be honest, who doesn't want to zip around with a cute-looking kitty sticking out of your backpack that even helps you finish off the goons you'll be smashing while out on your adventures? A really nice touch to this system is that you aren't limited to wearing a specific suit in order to utilize its associated mod. Once unlocked, you can rock any look that suits your fancy, pun intended, while taking full advantage of those mods as well, so you aren't shoehorned into using a particular outfit just to get its associated benefits. There's plenty to do in this recreation of New York City, and a good bit will involve stealthing your way through various missions using your superhuman Spidey senses and sneaking abilities. As someone who gravitates towards stealth gameplay in almost any title that offers it, I found this aspect enjoyable for what it was, but will also admit it's one of the game's weaker areas. Once you get the hang of it, stealth gameplay can be an absolute treat. As I mentioned, I'm a sucker for stealth in almost any form, but the tools available to Miles are far beyond what nearly any other game can provide. The ability to effortlessly scale walls, swing silently between perches, and stealthily pick off your enemies one at a time until none are left standing was simply exhilarating. Combat is where the game truly shines, which we'll touch on in a moment, but these stealth sequences unlock a power fantasy that's almost completely unique in what it offers, and these sequences were some of my favorites in the entire game. Despite my love for this implementation of stealth gameplay, it wasn't without its pitfalls, the biggest of which is the enemy's seemingly unrivaled ineptitude to spot you at all, even when performing a stealth takedown right in front of them. From a raw gameplay perspective, I get it, and this implementation of generous detection parameters for its enemy AI is nothing new. But it was honestly laughable how easily an entire enemy outpost with 10, 20, or even 30 soldiers could be picked apart without coming close to being detected even once. Maybe AI awareness ramps up drastically on the highest difficulty, but there were several times I busted out laughing while snatching up enemies with my webs, strapping them to the ceiling or a nearby post as their comrades casually strolled by mere inches away from their recently disappeared buddies without a care in the world. Despite my mild roasting of its difficulty, I still enjoyed stealth purely for the sake of what your capabilities as Spider-Man allow you to do. And even if you aren't a fan of this playstyle in other games, you should give it a chance here just to experience the untouchable feeling solving these stealth-based puzzles provides. Slinking around as Spidey can be fun and all, but the main draw for most players, other than swinging through the streets of course, is combat. and Insomniac has unequivocally nailed this crucial gameplay aspect yet again. The combat loop in Miles Morales is simply addicting, and offers a combination of technical gadgets, aerial acrobatics, and superhuman superpowers that coalesce to form a tantalizing package which never fails to impress. Almost a standard for any Sony-owned studio, all of which demonstrate a near-perfect grasp of action-adventure brawling. Insomniac has absolutely delivered on that front once again, and watching Miles take down his enemies in flashy Spider-Man style never got old. The feel of combat, swinging through the air knocking down opponents, pulling their guns right out of their hands, then smashing them with those very same weapons, and unleashing your destructive venom powers are just a few highlights of the complex and engaging system that's been crafted. There are 4 main gadgets with which to wreak havoc upon your enemies: standard web shooters, a holographic projection drone, remotely detonated mines, and a gravity well. All of these can be used either solo, or in conjunction with your other abilities to take down enemies. Sticking opponents to walls with your webs, distracting them with projections, blowing them up during stealth missions, and unleashing complete chaos with the gravity well all felt fantastic and cemented their own place in the sandbox. Where combat truly shines, though, is with Miles' bioelectric-fueled venom powers, one of the biggest things that set him apart from his mentor Pete. These yellow-tinted superpowers unleash massive destruction on any opponents caught in their wake, and also serve as a hard counter to some of the enemies and their equipment you'll encounter later in the game. The ability to ground-pound groups of opponents, yank them into the air, and supercharge your strikes with electric power are some of the most potent tools in your arsenal, and should be used to overwhelm the opposition at every opportunity. And not only do these powers help take down your enemies, but also serve as helpful tools for resolving some of the game's puzzle sections too. Unlocking and mastering new attack moves and combos, experimenting and upgrading your gadgets, and mastering your deadliest superpowers kept me glued to my screen with joyful glee during each fight from start to finish. Paired with this intricate suite of mechanics is a solid array of enemies to do battle with. Their design is decent overall, featuring your run-of-the-mill goons to start, but slowly ramps up by adding more complex variations to each faction's ranks as the game progresses. You'll battle Roxxon soldiers armed with deadly weaponry, screw those one-hit kill rocket launchers in particular, underground initiates equipped with powerful anti-Spidey tech, and muscle-laden criminals who will smack you back to Earth if you aren't quick enough on your feet. As these new enemy types are added, you'll be forced to make use of varying gadgets, combos, and abilities to take each one down. And while mastering every option at Miles' disposal isn't a requirement for finding success, the more you learn and practice, the better off you'll be when facing down the opposition. Like the first game, you'll also encounter several set-piece boss fights. These climactic encounters will see you facing down opponents like a Rhino juiced up on Roxxon tech, the stealthy Prowler and his sneaky gadgets, and an epic final showdown with the Tinkerer, who will throw all the underground tech at their disposal against Miles in a last-ditch effort to stop him. Overall, I quite enjoyed each of these encounters. Your second fight against Rhino manages to reuse a boss from earlier in the game with enough variation to his mechanics that you don't feel like including him twice was a ripoff. Your battle with the Prowler also switches things up to throw you off. Where Miles is typically the one unleashing stealth attacks on unsuspecting foes, the tables are turned against him here, forcing you to constantly be on the lookout for attacks from any direction and be prepared to counter them accordingly. The final showdown with the Tinkerer was a satisfying conclusion to this gauntlet of bosses. An epic score and visual backdrop frame your battle as you fight amongst the ruins of Roxxon Plaza. Several distinct and challenging combat phases force you to adapt and will strain your prowess to the limit as you face down this penultimate challenge. The battle was a thrilling and emotional conclusion to the game's main quest, and sees Miles step up to the plate and cement his title as Defender of Harlem. Overall, playing on the second highest difficulty hit the perfect sweet spot. I was able to enjoy the game's general combat without too much challenge, but some of the harder encounters and boss fights took me 3, 4, or 5 tries to conquer, which felt appropriate. Most people play the Spider-Man games to experience the power fantasy they provide, and Miles Morales certainly nailed that feeling of being a badass superhero. In this day and age of modern gaming, there's an implicit expectation that open-world, action-adventure, and RPG titles will be massive, sprawling affairs, built to consume your life for dozens, or even hundreds of hours from start to finish. Some games pull this off exceptionally well, with the likes of Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, and Cyberpunk 2077 offering well-constructed and engaging worlds that suck you in and make your time spent with them worth every second. On the other hand, games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Far Cry, sorry Ubisoft, not trying to pick on you too much, are often filled with largely meaningless dribble, quests and activities that eat up your time without providing a meaningful reward for all of the effort spent on them. I'll be the first to admit, I do love a good gaming epic that I can sink ungodly amounts of time into. I spent hundreds of hours across multiple playthroughs in Mass Effect, The Witcher, and Elder Scrolls, just to name a few. But I often find myself increasingly conflicted over the question of, did this game really need to be this long? And the answer that Miles Morales provides is one of the reasons I loved it so very much. In an age where many releases, not even just RPGs or open-world titles, are designed to suck as much time as they can out of you before tossing your withered body back into the ocean of gaming, giving you just enough time to recover before another blood-sucking title comes along to repeat this process, I found Miles' bite-sized adventure to be the perfect palate cleanser before my next extended romp with another sprawling epic. I hit max level around 90% of the way through its content, and rolled credits after 16 hours, with every single activity, quest, and collectible completed, excluding 2 underground caches I skipped over earlier. Listen, 16 hours for $50 might not sound like a great deal in the current industry landscape, but the relatively condensed experience broke me out of this bloated gaming haze and reminded me how much fun a concise yet fulfilling adventure can be. After wrapping up Miles' story, I felt almost liberated from those large-scale open-world expectations that have been ingrained into my brain for the last several years, and this experience was a breath of fresh air that left a lasting impression while never overstaying its welcome. Even after I scooped up the final set of collectibles, I found myself zipping around the city just to enjoy a few more minutes with the game before setting it down and moving on to something else. And that speaks volumes about its staying power despite the shorter runtime. With Spider-Man 2 releasing tomorrow, which is already looking like another certified Insomniac banger, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales serves as the perfect primer for our Spidey duo's next adventure, or as a quick weekend palate cleanser between larger games, and is well worth its purchase price. I can wholeheartedly recommend it for both newcomers like myself, and those that passed it up before, or never gave it a full chance during the PS5's launch window. Sometimes less really is more, and Miles Morales is the perfect example of how a game can embody that philosophy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this backlog review, make sure to like and subscribe for more gaming content, and let me know what older games you'd like me to dig out from my pile of shame next. You're a real one and I appreciate you. Catch you later, homies.